Hi, everybody. I'm Ryan McNeil. This is the Builder by Day podcast, and today I'm having a conversation with a fellow home builder, Rob Monk from Sanctum Homes. Rob, thanks for being here.
No, thank you for having me.
We'll have this. We'll just let this conversation go where it may. You and I have lots of things in common, although we've just met. So
Yeah,
we're in the same building industry, but our paths have actually not crossed until now, and we've even built in the same community.
Same community, and for whatever reason, our paths have never crossed. That's fine though. Like yeah.
We don't. I don't know if we even. I mean, you were building in Governor's Brook, like you mentioned, when I was there a few years ago, and I don't think we even have a lot of, if any, crossover on the trade or supplier side. So that's probably why we don't run into each other.
That actually is true. You know, that's weird. Like there's a number of builders that I did have trade crossover. Now, because I'm doing something different, I don't have virtually any crossover with anybody.
So Sanctum Homes is are you a dealer for?
Yeah, we're retailers, what they call us. But so the retailer So Supreme Homes is technically, I guess, the builder, but we take the clients from what would just be pieces of a home. We put the foundations, the septics, the driveways. We do all the site prep, everything to provide a turnkey home from what would just be a modular. So we deal directly with the clients, and then we just order the homes and they buy it. It's a little much different than your business in a lot of ways.
So for the folks that are listening, that I'll clarify that. So you're in the modular home business, and I'm in the site-built stick frame, we call it, business. And those paths, we don't really cross paths. You know, you and I were talking about this briefly just off air before we turned on here, but it's pretty rare for someone to come to a builder like me and also go to a builder like you. We generally have different clientele.
Very much.
So it's not like we're sitting here competing for the same client.
Yeah.
Two different approaches to things, and oftentimes built in different communities. When you were building in the community in Halifax, where we were both building, you were building stick frame.
I was stick frame. Yeah. Okay. So the story, it's kind of an interesting story, I can tell. It's kind of a little sad story too, I guess. I was starting to do some more real estate investing, buying up properties. And then we're going back probably late 2018 into 2019. And it was, it was June 2019, I lost a child. And after that, I said, I think I'm done with this construction thing. I'd been in construction my whole life. So back out, I swung hammers for a living.
Okay.
Right. So I started out when I was 18 years old, my own company. I started with painting and then grew that company, did a lot of bigger commercial jobs. In 2008, when that kind of fell apart because of the economic downturn, I switched into doing some renovations and then eventually flooring, which is what my father does. And then I grew that company, did quite well in the flooring world. But always in my mind, I always tell people I never saw myself as a flooring installer. I saw myself as this is just a stepping stone to something else.
Okay.
So then I got my real estate license. So I'm still a licensed realtor. Are you?
I am too.
Yeah,
I am too.
So I got my license, and I remember I was actually laying flooring at the Keller Williams office, the new Keller Williams office in Bedford, when I got called and told me, "Yeah, you passed your test. You're, you know."
Oh, is that right?
Yeah. So then that was like my first foray into kind of like the white collar world, from the blue collar world.
Sure.
Took me a little while to transition out of that.
Are realtors white collar?
Well, yeah, I mean, certainly they're not swinging hammers. Let's put it that. Let's put it that way.
I like to torture realtors because I am one, so I like to give it.
Yeah, no, I do too. I don't. Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you there. I just wanted to get that dig in.
And then I remember I was with a small brokerage, and I had to transition out of that I was going over to Remax. But before I went over to Remax, I was meeting different realtors and different brokerages, and this broker of another small brokerage said, "Hey, I got a property you might be interested in." And it was actually very close to here. It was on Copperhead Road in Fall River, which is just
I know what you mean.
done. Yeah. So it was a builder had lost it to the bank and they were selling it. And I looked at it and I ended up buying it, finishing it, and selling it.
Okay.
And I remember saying, it's like, man, no matter how far you try to run away from construction, you turn around and it's right there. Mm-hmm. And then that just propelled me in the home building. Slow at first. I don't come from money. Mm-hmm. My joke is my family had to save up to be poor. Like, so I had to work a lot harder than I think a lot of people do to get ahead. But I'm happy for it. I'm happy I did it. And, so then that transitioned into the modular. The reason I was getting out of construction, I just couldn't, it was getting busy. And it was hard for a builder that was like me, that was building 20 homes a year,
right,
to compete with the guys who are building 150 for the same trades. And so it got difficult. It got difficult doing it. I said, I don't need this. I just wasn't feeling very good, and I just kind of wanted out of it. So and then my father convinced me to get back, and he's like, we should do something together. And I said, that's cool. Okay. I'll look at it. And I said, under one term, I want to do modulars because that will reduce my trade requirement.
Sure.
And then I want to hire somebody to actually help me do it. He agreed to those terms. We worked together, and then he backed out after I got everything set up, he backed out. So it ended up just being me back in the construction again. But I've been doing that for a number of years. And I'm trying to think now, 2000, I think around 2020, I think I started in the modular world. Okay. So but yeah, it's been very good. It's been very good. I've been enjoying it. But it was a good transition for me. It worked out for me. But yeah, like I said, we don't have the same clients. They're different, very different clients.
Yeah, we have similar backgrounds in the sense that I don't come from, there's no construction background in my family. But like you, I don't come from any money. And I started in the real estate business first. I actually got my real estate license when I was 23 years old. I was in the real estate biz for about a year, and then I was around the new construction business, with working with other builders, and my wife and I had bought a new home, and then when we purchased our second home was also new construction. And then the second home, I realized, look, the first time, we were pretty green. My wife and I were like 23 and 20 years old. We were young, right? We were kids. True story. I went into the real estate business because in the process of that first home purchase, when we sold our first home, through the process of doing that, I was doing the math on how much I just paid the realtor. And then I was thinking, I told my wife, I'm like, do you know how many, at the time I was selling photocopiers. My first, big boy job from university was working at Xerox as a copier salesman, right? It was like, okay, university's over. I can't make a living teaching golf lessons for the rest of my life. So I have this business degree. I guess I should go get a grown-up job. I got a job selling photocopiers that lasted about 6 months. I was good at it, but I hated it. And I told my wife after we sold our second house, after we sold our first home, I said, wow, do you know how many photocopiers I have to sell to make as much money as I just paid this person to sell this house? And it was on the market for 3 days. They didn't even have time to put the sign up, and it was sold. So long story short, I went in the real estate business. I was in the real estate biz for, like about a year. And then I really took a interest in new construction. I didn't know anything about it other than my own experience. And then, I bought a lot and built a home for myself and my wife and my family. And in the process of doing so, I realized how much I enjoyed it. And then I bought a handful of lots. This is back when you could buy building lots for, I bought like 10 building lots. They were like 18 grand each. Yeah. Right. And those days are gone. Now it's $18,000 it's like that's the cost of the permit. So then, it just kind of progressed from, I thought I would build maybe a house or two a year, sort of complementary to the real estate business. You're out there selling things anyway, and it's just, you're in the same industry. But that quickly turned into my full-time gig. It's what I was most passionate about. And I still maintain my real estate license because, as you know, it's like, it's a vehicle, right? It's something that gives you an advantage. It gives you access to information and things that you don't otherwise have access to unless you're licensed.
And for me, it puts me in front of the people that have the buyers. That's right. Right? Like they see you in the office and they go, oh, hey, wait a minute. I got a client that might actually be a good suit for you. Exactly. So that's what it does for me. And it's, I got into the business when, 2006 is when I started home building. And back in 2006, the first number of homes that I built, I built a few homes that were under 200,000 turnkey, including land, nice little homes, right? My home's at Governor's Brook. Yeah. 300,000. Yeah. And now they're selling for 600. Right. And so I often say, I went into the home building business. I didn't have any money. My net worth was
was negative. I owed more money in student loans than I had, right? I had 50 grand in student loans and $1,000 in my bank account. I mean, that's how I was, when I went into the real estate business, my goal was, first thing was get rid of this student loan debt. But obviously it didn't come from any money. But nowadays I've mentioned to a few people, if that were like 20 years and now we're in 2025, I probably wouldn't have been able to pull this off because right. The money would be, the amount would be insurmountable. I wouldn't be able to do it because you can't buy lots for $18,000. You can't build homes for $189,900 or whatever we were selling for. Like now you have to get in the $700,000-$800,000 per house game. And you know, if you don't have any money or come from any money, that's a tough one to get into.
I think about this at least once a week. Could I pull this off if I were starting from scratch now? And this is actually something, this is one of my main reasons I'm involved in politics as I am, because I feel like, you know, I kind of liken it to like an Indiana Jones movie where the ground is falling out from behind you and I'm just running and the ground's falling out behind me. And I made it.
Right.
But could I pull it off? I mean, one of my first big deals I did in the subdivision we were working in, I bought 15 lots with $1,000 deposit on each one.
Right.
I mean, if you tried to go into a subdivision now and said, I want to buy lots, I'm only going to put $1,000 down, they would laugh. And like, that would be, you'd never hear from them again. Like that would be the end of that. Right.
That's right.
So it's a completely different world. And I don't know if that's a good thing.
Well, the barriers to entry to be a home builder, I've said this on my show in the past as well, but I tell this to everyone. The barriers to entry for someone to get into our industry and be a home builder are on one hand, zero. Tomorrow, you could call a lawyer, register a company with joint stocks, you know, and you're XYZ Home Building Co. There you go. You're a home builder. We don't require contractor licenses and things of that nature like they do in other parts of the world. But there is one enormous barrier to entry, and that is the finances. Right? Huge, because we build turnkey projects. Now, you could get into the renovation business, or if somehow, like, you know, I guess maybe if you had some connection somehow and you could find some clients that you could build homes for and they were going to pay in progress payments and so on. But if you have to bankroll that and you don't have a lot of money, it's going to be tough to break into the business. Yeah. Right.
And I think that is a huge barrier. One thing I learned in my years is like, I don't have, because of my family being what it is, you know, another joke I say is like, my family is the type of family more likely to say, I'll see you outside than I'll see you in court kind of thing. Like we're a little bit, you know, a little bit rougher. Right. And, you know, one of the benefits, I always thought the people that came from money, like if you had money behind you, that would be, the benefit would be the money. Like, but I've changed my thinking on that. I think actually one of the biggest benefits you get from coming from like a family with more established ties is actually the education. Like, I don't know, I had to like learn how banks worked.
Sure.
Like I didn't know how to talk to a bank, what they look for, what they, you know, what you can and cannot say.
Sure.
Like all these things, like I had to learn on the fly, you know, private lenders versus, you know, different and then the banking rules associated with when you get a client coming in the door and how to know how to approach this person. These are all things I had to learn. I had no one to teach me these things, right?
Right.
And now I'm open with people that say they want to get in. I try to be as helpful as I can because I don't believe competition is a bad thing. I don't agree with that. That's not my stance. So I try to help people. But I think if I had to say one thing, the money I could figure out, like, you know, that would come. But figuring out that barrier, that educational barrier, because they're not teaching that in school, right? They're not teaching you how to actually doing these things in school.
That's right. Yeah, it would be I think you're right. It would be a combination of, you know, money, quote unquote money, or coming from money or having money. The other thing it provides you is a bit of a safety net.
Yeah.
Right? Like I remember for the first. My God, for the first 10 years that I was a home builder, it just felt like, and I started young, right? So I started as a home builder when I was, 28 years old or whatever that was. And so, you know, I was young and had a lot of energy and was probably braver than I should have been and so on. But for that 10 years, you know, it felt like, I mean, I worked 7 days a week and oftentimes, you know, all day long. Like the phone starts ringing at 6:30. Because when I first started, probably similar to yourself, when I first started, I was sweeping houses
Yeah.
and humping drywall into a dumpster and
Yeah.
standing porta potties back up that blew down. I was doing anything.
Whatever
because
needed to be done.
I had no employees. Right.
Yeah.
For the first year, I had no employees, and then I hired one guy, and I had one employee for probably 2 more years, and so I did everything, all the administrative work, everything.
Mm-hmm.
Not like that now, thank God, but it's. I often say that for the first 10 years or so, I just felt like I was
Spinning
100 miles an hour with my hair on fire all the time.
Yeah.
Right? It's just you lay down and then you just close your eyes for a second and then you wake back up thinking, oh God, I forgot to do that or call this person. Or I couldn't tell you how many times, in my earlier years as a business owner that I would in the middle of the night just get up and go grab my laptop and open something up because I forgot to get on something. Like it's.
Oh yeah, I mean, obviously, you and I have a very similar path in that respect.
Yeah.
Like
I wanted to do it. I didn't. It's not that I.
Well, what's the alternative?
Yeah,
a 9 to 5, like
sure. Yeah, that was never going to happen for me.
No thanks.
It was never going to happen for me. No, I've been working since I've had a job since I was 10 years old, and delivering newspapers, mowing grass. By the time I was 13, I was working as a junior lifeguard for technically my employer was HRM.
Mm-hmm.
And I worked as a lifeguard from age 13 to 18.
Mm-hmm.
Pumped gas for all my high school years in addition to being a lifeguard. Raked blueberries up in Rawdon for a couple of summers. I did anything to make money.
Yeah.
Anything.
Yeah.
And then, went to, even while I was in university, when I went to university, I took all of my courses on Tuesdays and Thursdays, full course load, because I worked Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and Saturday at the golf shop. That's back before there was Sunday shopping.
Mm-hmm.
We were too hungover to work on Sunday anyway. Then, so I fit everything in there because I had to, when I was going to university, I had to, when I just, graduated from high school and then, okay, see ya.
Mm-hmm.
Right. That's, I grew up in rural Nova Scotia and in my family, that's how it went. We're all close. I have my family is close with my siblings and parents and my wife's parents and so on. Everybody gets along well, which is good. But, we grew up, by the time you were in 11th or 12th grade, you were like ready to go.
Right. Yeah.
Right. And then when school was over, I was out of here.
Mm-hmm.
And my brothers were the same way. It was like graduate from high school, off to university, see you later.
Yeah.
So a bit trial by fire. And it was the same thing when I went into the home building business. You just sort of figure it out as you go. And much like yourself, I just crawled into the bank on my hands and knees and said, chance you guys can loan me some money so I can do this? I don't really even remember, that was so long ago. I don't even recall setting that up, but obviously at some point I must have went in and got set up some kind of financing so I could, mortgage a house.
Yeah. I think you're like me. The trauma of the past kind of like allowed you to just block it out.
Oh yeah. And I had some dude, and like yourself, I'm sure you had some years that you obviously did have some years that you kind of wish you didn't have. And I
Yeah.
Right, and I had some of those too, years where you lost money, years where you lost a lot of money, and you look at the end of the year and you're thinking, financially, I would have been better off just to not go to work this year. Right? I would have been better off I was financially better off 12 months ago than I am right now after all that torture that we just went through. Different ups and downs in the market. And
what do you think drives us to keep going then? Because I want to, I get to ask.
I'm super competitive.
Yeah.
I'm super competitive even with myself. And I have it's sort of, this is I'm not suggesting that anyone listening that this is how you should structure your life, but it's sort of never enough for me. Like I don't mean money. That has nothing to do with money. I just mean I'm always pursuing better. Right? I'm always trying to get better. I'm always trying to find a better way to do it, be more efficient, be more effective. And I have no desire I shouldn't say I have no desire, that's not the way to put it, but I'm at a place now where it's not about how many homes a year I build. I don't have this desire to compete at volume wise. That doesn't mean anything to me. I just want to continue to do something I really enjoy doing. I like what I do. That's why I keep doing it. I mean, I can't imagine doing anything else. Even if I often say this and I mean it, if I won $50 million tomorrow in the lottery, I would still be, at some level, I would still be involved in real estate and construction. I know I would.
Yeah.
Now, I wouldn't be calling plumbers and lining up sub-trades. I'd step well back from that. But I would definitely still be doing something from a real estate development perspective. It's exciting. I like building things. I was growing up, as a kid, Monopoly was my favorite game to play, like many people. I love it. And And it's that same thing. It's like playing real life Monopoly, right? You're trying to buy properties and sell properties and keep moving ahead.
And this is your podcast. So I'm going to ask you a question. Because just a curiosity, this is the question I put to some friends. And I think it kind of plays to why we do what we do. Mm-hmm. You have an option. You can either take a job's offered you. It's $500,000 a year. And you're going to, for sure, it's guaranteed $500,000 a year. Or you can take a job, it's $100,000 a year, but you might end up earning a lot more. Like you maybe earn $1 million or $2 million. If the circumstances play right. Which one would you pick?
Am I in control of my fate? Do I determine?
It's not a roll of the dice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But in other words, if I do it well, and it's something that, if I do it well, I'll make more money than
you should.
Yeah. I will always bet on me.
Yeah. And this
so the answer to your question there is I'll take the $100,000 and I'll put my money on me because I will. Now, if it's realistic, of course, in that situation, I'm looking at it, I'm doing the math and seeing the probability of how realistic that is, but I will always bet on me.
Yeah, I think this is what drives people to go gold mining. Mm-hmm. And I get it. Like I absolutely get why people would go gold mining. Like it's like, yeah, you could turn over that rock and there could be, and so that's the thing that kind of keeps me, I think that's, it's some probably delusional. I don't know. I don't care because like I enjoy what I think
do. It's just people are motivated by different things. Sometimes, I guess technically you probably say I find myself motivated simply by the challenge. Like if somebody says, "Oh, you can't do that." You sure?
Oh yeah,
I
like my vehicle choices. Everything comes down to like, I don't want to do the different thing in a way. I want to do it. I kind of want to just be a little different than other people, and I think that's. I don't know why that is. I don't know what made me that way, but I'm happy. I'm like you. The money's not the motivator for me. Like the money's like a report card.
Yeah, that's
it just tells you that you did it right. Mm-hmm. Like, but at the end of the day, like I enjoy doing people's. You're in the same industry me. How much of your job is taken up by the government telling you no? Like and I just don't accept their no's. Like that's just how I take. I just like no, it's a no until I figure out a way to make it a yes.
Right.
And then it's going to be a yes.
Right.
And so like way too much of my time is spent arguing with the government, different government agencies about what I should be allowed to do and what not allowed to do. Yep. And yeah, sometimes it seems delusional. Like someone's like, what am I? You lay in bed and I look and I'm like, well, that job I just didn't turn out great. Like I didn't make much on that one, but hey, I'll wake up and do it again tomorrow.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think like anything, I guess with any career, but certainly for anyone who is, owns their own business and especially if you provide a service, I guess, or product would be the same way, but I wholeheartedly and absolutely believe in the product and service that my company provides. Mm-hmm. And so because of that, because I have that confidence in it, I enjoy doing it because I know that when we sell a home to someone, they're going to be happy with it. Mm-hmm. Right. So now there's always going to be that small, there's always going to be that,
I was going to push
whatever
back
that
a little
is,
bit
that
on
2
that.
or 3%.
Yeah.
You've dealt with them, I'm sure as well. The people who are only happy when they're miserable. There's nothing you can do to please them. Mm-hmm. They exist. I ran into a few of those. I ran into a couple of them out in Governor's Brook. I had a couple doozies out there.
Yeah.
Just absolute lunatics, man.
I tell people, like people come to me and it's like, I heard this about this builder, whatever builder. I heard this. And I'm like, I always caution people. It's like, there is no builder on earth that doesn't have somebody that would say that about them.
Of course. Absolutely.
Unless they built one home, if they built one home and it went well, that's the only way they're not going to have anybody.
That's right.
But it's just the nature. It's just the nature of this business. It's like, you're right. Like some people, I'm sure you've had people try to take advantage of you.
In our industry, litigation is it's pretty common, right? People, and it's the first thing I always say to people, like, you would be amazed how quickly people default to, well, I'll call my lawyer. Like early on in the conversation, if you have a conversation and it could be anything, it could be the most minuscule little thing and it's just not going their way and they default to, well, I'm going to call my lawyer then, as if we're going to go from arguing over this minor aesthetic thing in your home to see you in court. Mm-hmm. Look, there's a big gap in between there where we
Oh, I've had people do
right?
stuff like that where this is not the color I want it, and I'll take out the sample and hold it next the one that they picked.
Right.
This is the one you picked. Yeah, that's not the same. And you hold it, and they're like, no, that's not it's not the same. Like, it objectively is. I don't know what else to say to you. Like, this is what you picked. This is what we installed. I don't know what you want me to do.
And I get it. It's building a home. I mean, moving is stressful, whether it's new construction or not. If it's new construction, it's even more stressful because you have the construction part of it. And I understand that it's stressful.
Yeah.
And as builders, the better we are at reducing that stress, the better the experience will be for everybody. And we try to do that by being organized and communicating effectively with people, but you're still going to run into that scenario. I told your example about the paint colors, exactly. We've dealt with that same thing where we've said, look here, these are your initials on the back of the sample. We flip it over and we hold it on the wall and it's a bang on match.
Yeah.
And, we're not saying that because we want to argue with them or stick it to them, but we say, look, in that scenario, we've had that happen before and say, it is the right color, but we're not out to get you. So we'll ask the painters to repaint the room for you, but you got to pay for it.
Yeah.
Right? Nobody made a mistake here. You essentially are just changing your mind.
And I've said to
we'll
people,
work with you.
I'll hand you the bill.
Sure.
Right.
That's right.
I'm not trying to make money off this.
Right.
Just like, let's just get it resolved. But yeah. And then, there's some people, they've lived a long life and nothing's ever been their fault yet.
Right.
And you come across those people and it can get hard. But
there's also, and in fairness, I understand where it comes from. And there's also some folks come in the very first meeting or the first conversation you have with them, and you find that first meeting is really just about getting them to let their guard down because they come in sort of, they're talking to a builder or a contractor or someone. They have that like,
and we're trying to rip you off.
Yeah, we were out to get you type thing, right? And it's like, I've had people come in and first time I've ever met them, never met them in my life, never had any conversation with them before, and they're sort of immediately just resistant isn't even the right word. It's like combative. And I'm thinking, look, this isn't the vibe I'm looking for.
Right.
Here,
Yeah.
I don't need this.
No, I don't. And that's if there's any saving or kind of, let's say, silver lining to the market currently is that, I'm sure you're in positions where you weren't in such a position to be able to say no to certain clients, right? You had to take it even.
Well, I got better at it. I've become better at recognizing those signs. And realizing, and in a polite way, I will just let that person go. I just won't pursue it. Right.
Yeah.
I won't tell them, listen, you're a gong show. I don't want anything to do with you. But I just will let it evaporate because I know that person is not. It's just not worth the effort. They're going to torture my staff to death.
Yeah.
I know where this is going. I've been down that road. No thanks.
And you get an eye for it and you get to notice it. And then, it's a weird, a lot of conversations I have with clients too. I do this on purpose. As I say, your interests and my interests are very aligned.
Absolutely, man. We both want the same thing.
There's no reason to be adversarial here. Like, you want the house done, I want the house done. That's when I get paid.
Absolutely.
So this is like, we're very aligned in what we're doing here.
That's right.
I have no reason to try to pull one over on you.
That's right.
And between that and I'd say one of the other struggles is convincing people there's no such thing as a perfect house. And I say that from a perspective of not like, oh, there's damage, or I'm talking about in the design phase.
Sure.
You're like, oh, this room got to be bigger. Well, if that room's bigger than this hallway,
exactly.
You start, listen, you could spend 8 years on this plan. It won't be perfect.
Right.
Like you got to understand this is just the nature of the, most often when they realize that and they kind of get to know you a little better, I find the guard comes down, but you're right. That guard initially for some people, where are you trying to get me? It's like, I'm trying to sell you a home. Like, this is my job. I'm trying, I'm in the modular world. It's actually very interesting. I don't know how it works for you, but 3 people could walk into my office and ask for the same home. They're getting the same price because it's very much just like kind of a plug and play kind of thing. So
it'd be the same thing for me. It would be exactly the same thing. When we price a home, all things being equal, this home is going to be the same for this person or that person or the other person. And even if we were talking, this is, it's a little tougher to be exactly the same, but even if you were talking 2 different locations, like let's say somebody wanted to build in Dartmouth and somebody wanted to build in Fall River, everything being equal about the land and site work and so on, it's the same price. We don't charge differently for Bedford versus Fall River versus, all things being equal.
Yeah.
But you're right. You're exactly right in that we all want the same thing. Well, I say that to people, when we sit down with them, we both want the same thing. We both want, ideally, for us to build you a home. Mm-hmm. That's what we want.
And you to be happy.
Yeah. And when it's all said and done, and we also want it to be done on time and to your satisfaction. And we want you to be happy and we're happy. We shake hands and part ways, and hopefully everyone that walks in your home says, wow, this is beautiful. And you say, yeah, if Stonewater Homes built this home, we love it. Mm-hmm. And that is primarily what we get all the time, with other than the odd person here and there who you just can't please, and you just have to unfortunately accept that.
And unfortunately, for whatever reason, I thought about this. Those are the ones you remember.
Yeah, that's right.
It's you go, wow, and then you go, what? You know what though? Like all the other clients that I did this year were great. So what? Like why am I so
Sure, yeah, but, and I'm sure that happens in every industry.
Yeah.
Like I'm sure car salesmen have the same thing to say, and appliance salesmen have the same thing to say. Most people are good, and every now and then you run into somebody that's not, and that's unfortunate, but it's life. I enjoy this work, and I enjoy this industry, and I enjoy the relationships, working with people and tradespeople and suppliers. I have, for the most part, all of the same guys that we use. And
I love tradespeople.
And many of them have been with me since day one, like it's, I don't know if I have a trades person that hasn't been with me for at least 5 or 6 years. And most of them would have been with me for,
that's good.
Somewhere between 10 and 20, all of those years. And that's how it works. If you have a good reciprocal relationship and you're respectful of one another, and they do what we need them to do, and we pay them, and everybody's happy. Just move on to the next one.
I love trades. Like they're like such great people to be around. Like if I'm ever, if you're, for me, it's ever having a bad day, go hang out with the trades.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah. They're just joking and having a good time, and it's a hard job. Like they do hard work.
They do hard work. Yeah.
And I don't know how you feel. I'm actually kind of happy they're starting to get paid more. I used to be kind of frustrated with the idea that no one working on the homes could afford them.
Sure. Yeah.
And now it's turning around a little bit. As long as everybody, as long as the market is dictating that, like I'm happy to pay them more. And so it's good. I'm happy to see that the wages are getting to a point where they can actually have, like, because, they work really hard, and when it's a nice day, when we call a nice day, it's 30 degrees and sunny, there's a roofer, burning up,
Sure.
There's a foundation guy that is sweating, his socks are wet from sweat, so and I have a great deal of respect for the tradespeople. It maybe helps that I came from that world too. That
I'm sure it does. It gives you that perspective, and these houses don't give, even with AI and robots and so on. These houses, we're a long way from these houses building themselves in some form of automation, right?
Yeah,
there would be some automation, assembly line stuff in your world, perhaps.
But even still, it's largely
we are a long way from
people swinging a hammer.
That's right.
Yeah,
that's right.
And it was with the AI revolution. Like the idea was it was going to your doctors and your lawyers will be okay, but like these manual labor jobs are going to take up. It actually ended up being the exact opposite.
Sure.
Where like a lot of those white collar jobs are being taken over. And actually, this might be an interesting thing to talk about. But the blue collar remains, because a robot is not going to jump up and hammer shingles down.
Right.
So it yet. Yes. I mean, down the road, it absolutely could happen.
Sure. I have a great appreciation for anything that the tradespeople do. Any whatever it is, whether you're installing siding or hanging cabinets or laying tile, right? That's a skill that you know how to do, and or operating a excavator or whatever it might be, right? That's a skill, and the higher your skill, the more I appreciate that, and the more efficient you are with it, the more I appreciate that. But I also appreciate work ethic, so I appreciate the guys that I can rely on. They're going to be there at 8:00, and they're going to work till the end of the day, and they're going to be back tomorrow, and they don't leave things half done. And like if they'll say things like, "Oh, we just have a couple hours left." I'm like, well, then would you just go do it? Like that? Why would you come back a week later? Can you just, that couple hours is tying us up, right? So sometimes, like you say, you feel like you're a parent trying to explain things to somebody, and you try not to sound like an idiot, sound like a jerk when you do it, but it's
sometimes you got to sound like
they don't necessarily know what your schedule is, right?
Yeah. So I heard something you talk about a podcast before about affordable housing, and I'm curious because this is something that I've talked a lot, scream into the void about all the time.
I've mentioned that a number of times about affordable housing, and I mean, what does that even mean, that term? But we'll define it here as we go on. But I've had a few guests on here and a few people I've talked with, and other builders, planners, and so on, that we've talked about this affordable housing topic, I guess, that floats around in the world. And what does that really look like, and what's really going on? What really are the barriers, and what, you know, so I haven't built any quote unquote affordable housing. I've looked into it. I've explored some of the different sites that the government has, you know, put on their website.
Systems, yeah.
And, you know, I've looked at a few, and I've even gone so far as to physically go and walk some of these properties and kind of, like we talked about, kind of scratch my head about what could I do here, and look at the zoning, and, you know, what kind of yield could I get here, and so on. But I mean, my opinion when it comes to, in general, if we're just talking, if somebody said, generally speaking, how do you feel about what's going on when it comes to affordable housing? What I mean by that is affordable housing in the sense of government initiated affordable housing. I don't mean affordable housing like private sector, how inexpensive can we build it? When it comes to affordable housing, my opinion is this: there is absolutely no connection whatsoever between the government and the private sector. We have no idea what they want. We have no idea what they're trying to do. We have no idea how much money it is they would like to invest. They put out a site. Here's a particular address. And they basically approach it with, send us a proposal of what you as a developer builder would like to do here. And we'll collect these proposals. And then if we like something, we'll decide upon doing it, and off we go.
It's relatively arbitrary.
Yeah. And my comment with that is, and I said this to a number of people, I'm like, that's not how this operates. That's no different than if somebody came in here. I actually used this analogy once. I don't think I did this on the air, so I'll do it now. For the government to say, we want to build some here's essentially what they're saying is, we have these sites. We want to build quote unquote affordable housing. I mean, what does that even mean?
Right.
So they say, here's the site. Let us know what you'd recommend. And then we will decide if we like any of those proposals, and if so, which one we like the most, and off we go.
Yeah.
But we have no criteria to work with. What do you want me to propose? Do you want an apartment building? Do you want small units like they just built over in Sackville and Cobequid, little, 160 square foot units? Do you want slab on grade, barrier free, senior friendly stuff? Like, what do you want? Yeah. Right? That'd be no different than if somebody came into the office and said, we'd like to build a home. Okay, great. Have a seat. Let's talk about it. Where would you like to build? Well, we have half a dozen sites around HRM or around the province. And I'd say, okay, well, let me see where the sites are. Okay, well, I don't build in Cape Breton or Antigonish, so we're down to these three. There's somewhere in HRM. Great. Which one do you guys want to build on? And if they said, well, we don't really care. We'll build on whatever one. Okay, cool. What would you like to build? Well, we don't know what we want to build. You tell us. Yeah, maybe that's where we are. And it's like pulling teeth with these guys, right? What do you want? Why are you not, when it comes to affordable housing, what I can't get my head around, there's a number of things. First of all, I don't know where they're coming up with these numbers. When they announced, like last month, they announced they were going to spend I'm forgetting these numbers now. I think it was 136 million on 222 quote unquote affordable housing units. Anyway, I remember the math, how it worked out. I remember the math worked out to a little over $560,000 a unit. That's not affordable housing. I mean, I can build homes turnkey, single family homes, turnkey, and sell them to people for less than that. For that matter, you can go in the real estate market and buy homes for less than that. So what are we talking about here? What are these units that you're building that are $563,000 each? Where did that number come from? Who came up with that? Who came up with the 136
when
million?
you dig into it too, because I mean, we're very much talking my wheelhouse now, right? Like this is the world that I spend a lot of time in. Okay. And when you really dig into those numbers, you find out that, it's 500, but it's actually some of that is for like wraparound services they call and a bunch of other stuff that nothing to do with the house itself. Sure. So it's, there's all kinds of examples, like the pallet shelters, for example. If you look at the numbers, like this is crazy the amount that we're spending on that. But then when you look into it, it's like, well, it's also the on-site, services. That
but for instance, that one in Cobequid, right? That was worked out to like almost 160 grand a unit for a 10 by 6. More than that. Yeah, 10 by 16 shed with a porch on the front. And that didn't include the wraparound services because they come afterwards at a cost of $1,300 a month per unit to the taxpayer to whatever they call that
service. Want to hear a really cool story about that place?
Sure.
So First of all, if you and I want to build that, forget it. There's no such thing as a zoning that would allow for what's out there.
No.
But also, that would be like, let's say we want to build it privately, and like, because I know a lot of people that saw this, especially in my political talks. They're like, especially seniors, fixed income. Like, I'd live there.
Sure.
Right? Like, I'd live there. Like, that's like I'm paying $2,000 a month for my apartment. I'd rather live there.
Sure.
Right? And so that's a problem. But also, CTV went there and did an interview with a couple of the tenants. And the first one was this elderly lady, and she, it was kind of the story, the type of thing that you're hoping that as the people we would protect.
Right.
But then the second guy was a guy that I know all too well. Because if you search my name on Google, you'll get...
Not the other Rob Monk, is it?
Yeah.
I know that idiot.
Yeah, he was...
I had a run-in with that guy.
Yeah, he's living there.
Oh.
So apparently...
Criminal.
And I mean, I'm going to be very upset about this because, I mean, it affected me a great deal,
He's
right?
probably in there swindling people.
Well, he was swindling. But I remember when the story came out that I actually called the police and was like, you guys got to correct your story here because this is crazy. Because you're saying he started over the last year, he's done this. He's like, I dealt with this guy 12 years ago.
Yeah.
People calling me, when you come to seal my driveway? Like, I don't know what you're talking about. Well, you sold a Groupon and I'm like, no, I didn't. Like this is the other guy. Call the police. This guy, he's been at this. This is what he does.
Yeah.
So I will never know how many deals I lost because this guy with the same name as me is out there.
Yeah, it's unfortunate.
And I got very upset with that because when he got found guilty, I read the court, like the decision, and it said that he was not morally culpable for the crimes he committed because he was a meth addict. And then I think that means more jail. Like, you know what I mean? Like, right. I don't understand how that logic works. But anyway, this is the difference. So yeah, I mean, he's living there in that nice place. So apparently, if you're a meth addict that risks people out, they give you a home. So anyway, listen, I wish nothing but the best for people. I hope he's changed his life. I hope he's clean. I hope he's doing well. But I mean, that was definitely not the best look for that place. I've contemplated changing my name over because I'm in the same industry,
that is unfortunate,
right?
man.
Like I'm a construction guy.
Yeah, you're in the same.
And this guy, and people are calling me like,
and he's not a construction guy. He's a con artist.
He's a con artist.
And construction industry is one of the easiest industries to be a con artist in, right?
And so he at the time I get arrested was 51, and I think I was like 30. I'm gonna say I was like 35, maybe 34, something like that. And my father was like 56. And his name is Robert Monk too.
Oh, really?
And so I was getting messages like, are you okay? Or is your dad okay? Whatever. I'm like, yeah, no, we run a large real estate development company and we swindle people on the side for building sheds. Like that's, we like to mix things up every now and then. My big concern, my number one concern above all else is the fact that we're switching so much in the rentals rather than owner occupied. I mean, it's like, I think it's the first, I looked into this, I think it's the first, the recent years been the first time in, I'm going to say like 60 years in Canada that the home ownership percentage has gone down.
Is that right?
Like
Yeah, that kind of brings me to another thing I feel when it comes to the political side, I guess, of whether it's provincial, not so much at the municipal level, because at the municipal level, everyone's sort of in it for themselves. When it comes to councillors and so on, like it's not like there are political parties, but at the provincial and federal level, if somebody, whatever the issue is, if there were a party who would just lay out the facts of the matter, so that everyone could really see where things are, like even something simple, like you said, I don't mean simple in the sense that it doesn't matter. I mean simple to understand. Put it in a chart. In 1980, this was the percentage of the percentage of homes that were out there. This was the percentage of home ownership versus rental, and then how that's changed. And graph it and show people that how the percentage of people who own homes versus the percentage of people who rent homes and how much it's changed. And then do the same thing with the number of people who are unhoused, and do the same thing with, whatever it might be. You could just collect the information, put it in a very easy to understand and see presentation, and inform people of the scenario so they can see how things are shifting and changing. You could do the same thing with building permits or development permits and timelines, right? You could collect that information, start keeping track of it and sharing it with people. So then when a municipality, for instance, tells you that they've removed barriers or whatever this nonsense is that they say, and then you look at the actual information, you say, well, that's interesting because the average time for a building permit, from the time it was submitted, single family home was, in 2001 was 7 days, and now it's 16 days, or so. You don't seem to be going in that direction. And then the amount of time it used to take to get a development agreement approval to build a subdivision of lots, it used to take 6 months, and now it takes 6 years. So that's not moving in the right direction either. So if you just put this information out there, but not from a partisan perspective, just leave the politics out of it and just put the information out there.
Yeah, it's difficult.
Right?
One of the issues is, so first I'll just briefly say, I don't know if do you subscribe or read All Nova Scotia, like the article in there? So there was an article, I think last week or maybe this week, it said that HRM won like most improved or something like that in the permit approval thing like that.
Oh, sorry, I didn't see that.
And I was like, man, I feel
That's
bad.
Like winning a participation award.
I feel bad for the rest of Canada if Halifax is the best of Canada got the offer.
Yeah, I can't imagine that's even true, but
yeah.
Sure.
Anyway, whatever. It doesn't. It's an insane kind of way to pat yourself on the back. But so the one of the issues is I think you and I are similar in the idea. I'm what I call myself a spreadsheet conservative.
Okay,
like just give me a spreadsheet and go away. Like talking about who do you support or I like the cut of this guy's jib, whatever. Like between Poilievre and Carney, the only things I care, like here's one fact that does all of it for me. And this is a little bit in the weeds, but there's essentially two main schools of thought in economics: Austrian economics and Keynesian economics. Carney's a Keynesian, Poilievre's an Austrian. That's all I need to know. I don't care if I like the guy. I don't care if how he speaks. I don't care about any of that. If the ideology driving the people is what I consider a proper economic one, then that's the one I want. So for you and me, I agree. Give me the spreadsheet. Show me where all this happened. Okay, we can gauge his performance. That's enough. Unfortunately, politically, there's way too many people that are like, I like the cut of his jib.
Sure.
And that's the problem. It's like, I don't like the way he speaks, and now I wouldn't vote for him.
Sure.
And it's like, you see all that, and it's like, it makes me sad. I mean, it's looking at the polling numbers right now for Liberals, it's depressing. Like, how could 9 years we just went downhill, and then they changed the face, and all of a sudden we're supposed to forget all that? I mean, that's so staggering to me.
Yeah, it is hard to believe, isn't it?
And but again, it's not because of the spreadsheet. I can tell you that, because the spreadsheet wouldn't tell you that.
No.
That's going to be like, I like his haircut or whatever, like whatever the, sure, intangibles of a guy that hasn't barely lived in Canada in the last decade.
Sure.
All of a sudden is our prime minister.
That's right. I mean, nobody even knew who this guy was 2 months ago.
I know.
And now he's like, they're all supporting him with this willful blindness. Like he can do no. They don't even want to hear. As soon as you start talking about anything about his past or his business dealings or anything, they just don't even want to hear about it. They don't want to hear it. No, I've already decided I'm pot committed. This is my guy. I've been told that I should roll with him because CBC says he's the guy. I mean, it's just... I
get so... I don't even know what to say because it's so crazy to me.
Yes.
Like, it's so crazy that... Like, imagine you're a builder that was terrible. And all of a sudden they're just like, well, we changed out the project manager.
Sure.
And it's like, you're supposed to just agree, oh, no, the company's good now.
Right.
Like the concept is so crazy to me. That's like, right. It really is. It's really, I can't figure it out. And I'm hoping, there's a thing in polling called the new leader bump and all that. That's I'm hoping this is all the case. And in a month or two from now, we'll be back to where it should be. Yeah. I am a very partisan person, and it's actually one of probably the main reason I reached out to you I wasn't even thinking of being on a podcast. I just wanted to talk to you.
Sure.
Because I was listening to some of the things you were saying. And you said it even in this podcast that you don't think there's a party that represents kind of like the way you think.
Right? I don't think there's a party that represents the people,
right?
The working class people, middle class people,
all right.
And it's not only. It's certainly not only when it comes to things like big ticket things like, things that are beyond the working class person's everyday routine. I don't think there's a party that represents the people when it comes to even the culture war that we are in the middle of, that many people don't even realize is happening. Some of us many of us do realize, and when I say, I mean, millions of people realize that we're in a culture war in this country. And that includes the people who even have just, a social media account and they're just keeping track of things. And even it's something as subtle as liking a post that is somebody fighting for your side of the culture war, or having a conversation with somebody at work, or talking to your brother about it, whatever it is. So there are people that realize this culture war is taking place. And then there are some who are one step beyond that, who are trying to do their part to be in the fight. And then there are some that are going even further to be in the fight, and they might go, get into politics, for instance. But I find that as soon as somebody goes into politics, they are no longer in the culture war. They've left the culture war, right? Because there aren't I don't hear any politicians talking about these.
I could see you thinking that from a perspective, like, because of the public face, right? And so. I mean, in disclosure, so like I'm a conservative now. I'm helping with a re-election campaign, and I've been a conservative for. I'm one of these. I think there's a saying you probably heard. If you're not a liberal when you're in your 20s, you have no heart. If you're not a conservative by the time you're 30, you got no brain, something like that.
Sure.
And it's like, I guess I'm the one with no heart, because I've always been a conservative. Always been like, my temperament is conservative. It'd be very unlikely you could out right wing me.
Sure,
you know what I mean? Like,
sure.
I had a couple of revelations in my. So I ran against the Conservatives as a People's Party candidate in the South Shore St. Margaret's, and well, we can talk as much about that as you want. But I tell you, my views of politics have evolved since then. Because I would say the same thing. There was no real party that really kind of met. And even the PPC, I knew it wasn't going to be perfect, but it was, when I did it, it actually wasn't, I knew it wasn't going to win. I'm not delusional. Like, I understand that that's the case. But what I was trying to do was, it gave me a way to get an idea out there.
Sure.
And for me, the idea was more like a libertarian almost style. Sure. Although I am conservative more than libertarian, but it was more like free markets. Like, I always tell people, my political stance is leave me alone.
Mine is the same.
Just leave me alone.
Yeah, mine is the same. If I could sum up, I'm more of a populist type guy.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So,
yeah. Oh, you mean you believe in democracy?
Yes.
That's literally the definition of populism.
Yes.
It's staggering to me that people hate
in the last
that word.
couple of weeks, I hear people, just this morning, I actually paused the TV I still have cable, because admittedly, as much as I don't.
You like waking up angry. You like getting
angry.
angry.
I get pissed off in the morning. So I flip on the mainstream media and get myself wound up and then go yell at some subtrades. No. But I've noticed in the last couple of weeks, that populism term has been used as like a derogatory.
Oh, it's been for years.
Yeah, but more and more now I'm seeing it. People say there's this populist
gives
movement.
Up the game.
Populist movement. Like, does anybody, like, when they do this, I feel like saying, I want to chime in and say, does anyone know what that word even means? Do these people even know what that means?
I went through this just with someone the other day. They said, I was like, what do you think populist? What do you think populist means?
Right.
And he's like, I can't remember what he answered, but I'm like, okay, I'm going to tell you.
They'll come back with some far right crazy.
Yeah, and I'm going to say, I'm just like, literally, pull out you're on your phone.
Right.
Just Google search what populist is.
That's right.
And he reads it, and the definition online is pretty straightforward. It's
it's basically ordinary people
against the elites.
Against the elites.
Yeah.
If you had to sum it up that way.
And he's like, oh, that's a good thing. I'm like, yeah. And
meanwhile, you have a globalist, an admitted globalist billionaire elitist in charge of the country at the moment, who was not elected by anybody, just put in place.
Democracy.
Yeah. In other words, that couldn't be that couldn't be further from populism than where we are right now. So I don't affiliate myself with any particular party, but it's because I would consider myself a populist.
Right.
And there would be libertarian things that I also support. I just find that, and there's a lot of crossover there. I mean, there are definitely some synergies between populism and libertarianism. But the laissez-faire markets and so on, I mean, to me, the libertarian stuff just seems a little like a tougher sell. I just think it's easier to tell people, don't you think that this should be every person's vote counts and the people should have, don't you want to be represented by one of your own? Don't you feel like the person, whoever it is that's elected at whatever level, shouldn't they be representing you, the people that elected them, rather than some, other group or some special interest groups or some elite group of globalists or whatever it is? Like,
I mean, to me, like that attack on populism, it really just gives up the game, the real.
Well, it
game.
tells you, they're like, just saying exactly what's going on.
They're like they're
not
saying
even hiding it anymore.
They're like, no, we're the elites and we want to be in charge.
That's right.
That's what they're saying.
That's right.
And it's shocking to me that actually worked. Like that actually worked. It's like, oh, he's a populist.
Yeah.
Trump's a populist. Pierre is a populist. And it's like,
that they said it this morning. She said that whoever this CBC News person was made a comment about Poilievre and something to do with populism, like tying them together.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, what?
How's that a bad thing?
Yeah, I'm like, that's not a bad thing.
He should be. There's things I wanted in my prime minister. I want him to be a populist. I want him to be a nationalist. And to be clear, I did not say white nationalist. I said nationalist.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%.
Be pro-Canadian.
Yes.
That's literally their job.
Yes.
That is the only job.
If they're not that, they should be immediately disqualified as far as I'm concerned. What country are you working for then?
If you want to solve problems in Botswana, go run a government in Botswana. Like, you're here for Canada.
That's right.
And that's the only interest that you have. That doesn't mean I don't care about Botswana. It means my government shouldn't care about Botswana.
That's right.
And so this is, I don't understand how these became like controversial thoughts. Like, you should care what your people think, and to a degree do what they say. Of course, you can't. I don't believe in what they call what's the word for it? It's type of democracy. It's basically like everything is put to the ballot. Like, you want to tie your shoe. It's like, we're going to have a vote.
Sure.
No, we elect people to be leaders. Let them be leaders.
Yeah.
But there needs to be a measure where, like, you got to be somewhat at least in line. Like, when 70% of your population is telling you that maybe immigration's out of hand.
Right.
Maybe that's the time to fix immigration, right? Like, don't go, no, we know better than 70% of Canadians.
That's right.
And that this is the thing that, how these things became derogatory terms, I'm not sure. But
I think part of the problem is that I don't know even what the issues are anymore. I mean, I know what the issues are. I shouldn't say that. We all know what the issues are every day that we see in our community. We all see and feel the cost of living and inflation and the growing number of unhoused people and the issues that we're faced with when it comes to affordable housing and the lack of housing. And there are problems with immigration, and there are problems with, or potential problems when it comes to our sovereignty. And then there are these big things that are at the federal level that, quite frankly, are beyond us regular folk, like foreign interference and Chinese interference in our government and all these things that are clearly taking place. But us regular, ordinary folk can't do anything about that. So we have to entrust the folks that we've elected to deal with that and not let it continue on. And the fentanyl issues and the gangs and the crime out of control. We have Canada now has something like 3 times as much violent crime per capita as the US. We're not the country we once were, right? And but we see it at the local level. We see it. We see tents popping up more often. We see these signs of things deteriorating. But it seems like every time there's an election, and this year it's going to be this unique scenario where I don't know when the election is going to happen. I mean, I don't know anything more than what I hear in the news like everybody else. But just last night on television, they were talking about how they're expecting an election to be announced somewhere in the next coming days, and it'll happen sometime in May or something, right? Okay, great. What that means, though, is that means that in this country, in this province, we will have had a municipal, provincial, and federal election in like a 7-month time frame. So it seems like we've been just in this constant state of politics and elections and that kind of talk. But in all of it, like if you think back to the municipal election that we had here back in October, if I asked you to name 3 issues, like what do you think were 3 issues that were at hand? So if you were to talk to your local councillor or someone running for council, what do you think were the 3 issues that they were probably hearing people talk about the most? I mean, the homeless situation would be one of them.
Yeah, the housing.
Situation
around housing.
The increasing number of unhoused folks.
I can tell you what the number 1 thing was, and see if you get it, because it wasn't a municipal issue.
What was it?
Immigration.
Yeah.
That was the number one thing. I talked to several candidates. They said the same thing, door to door. Immigration, number one thing.
And nobody wants to go anywhere near it, because as soon as they start having a conversation about immigration, it so quickly dissolves into, if you're like, you can't, that's a topic where it's like, we can't have a real conversation about it, because as soon as somebody starts voicing their opinion being not anti-immigration, but just the way this is happening is not, we need to address this clearly. We can't have people coming in here on student visas, and 50,000 people come in on student visas and never report to school. Clearly that's a problem, right? They weren't students. They never were, right?
Yeah.
And I mean, that's just one example, but like if you go back to even your comment on nationalism, for instance, I also would consider myself a nationalist for sure. And 6 months ago, you said that people would immediately put white in front of that. But now, ever since this Trump got elected, and now the Liberals have decided to wrap themselves in a Canadian flag and this stupid elbows up thing. And they even use the word nationalism now, like, oh, it's okay now because the Liberals are being nationalists about it, right? But like, for instance, when it comes to nationalism, even though it might not be at the national level, here's a question, here's something I've always had issue with. If the government, provincial government or federal government, whoever it is that is providing financial incentive for immigrants to move here and be employed, let's say at Tim Hortons. I'm not talking doctors, I'm not talking surgeons, okay? I'm talking entry-level positions whose wages are being subsidized. I have a real problem with that. Because if you're going to subsidize wages in an effort to get more people in the workforce or make it more affordable for those business owners to operate, if that's the case, I got issues with that too. I mean, if Tim Hortons can't make it, they can't make it. Why are we subsidizing Tim Hortons, right? There's one on every corner now. Maybe we don't need that many. You ever think of that?
And maybe they don't need to be open 24/7.
That's right. That's what I'm saying. Maybe we just have enough Tim Hortons. Maybe we've reached capacity. But back to what I was saying is, if as taxpayers, our taxpayer dollars are going to be used to subsidize wages of entry-level positions, I want that to be young people who are looking for jobs, or seniors who still, God forbid, still need to work at 70 years old. Make it more attractive for these companies to hire those folks. And then when we've exhausted all of that and they're all working, because teenage employment is decreasing and we're bringing in people from other countries to do what used to be teenage employment jobs.
And do you hear, I know what I hear. I'm just curious if you hear the same thing. Do you hear why people think we need to do that? Because the government tells them. Right, nobody knows that. Yeah, but usually what I hear is some version of like, well, we don't have the people to work the job.
That's what I'm saying. Right. They say, I see it right here in our industry. Right here in our industry, you see it on a regular basis. They'll say things like, we don't have enough people to do the work. We need more construction workers, and we got to bring people in to do whatever it is that's not getting done. Meanwhile, I'm getting phone calls from tradespeople who are never looking for work. They're always busy. Yeah. They've been busy for 20 years, and they're calling me going, hey man, what do you got coming up? My other builder's not doing much, and haven't heard from this guy, and things are slowing down. And there are people looking for work. People here are qualified. Yeah. I'm
seeing it more too now.
Yeah. Qualified, skilled labor looking for work. So, and I said that, a few months ago, speaking in all Nova Scotia, one of the reporters had called me, and they just called me this week looking for my 2 cents on how things are going. I'm happy to share what's going on in my world. And back then I said, look, man, for what it's worth, I'm doing this for 20 years, and I've never had more people looking for work than I have now. I'm not saying it's the only time it's happened, but this isn't like 3-4 years ago in COVID when you couldn't find someone to do work. Now I have qualified tradespeople and skilled labor looking for work.
Yeah, I get the same thing.
Right. And other builders I know telling me the same thing. And other builders I know telling me they're not operating at capacity. They have capacity to do more. They're not as busy as they could be or once were.
Which is weird with all the demand there is for housing.
Exactly. So I'm saying there's this disconnect between the reality of things on the ground and what the message is, what the narrative is. And so why are we being sold this idea that there's not enough people to do the work, when meanwhile there are people being laid off because there's not enough work?
So one of the arguments I had a round table with a provincial minister, and some other people were sitting there, and someone at the table had said something along the lines of like, well, maybe they're doing jobs that Canadians don't want to do. And I said, I reject that idea. I've seen Canadians crawl through sewers.
Yeah.
So I know there's no job they won't do. They may not do it for minimum wage.
Sure.
But they'll do it.
Sure.
Like, so that's not true.
Yeah.
Right.
No, I don't believe that either.
That's not true. That there is no job. I've never seen a job a Canadian won't do. And the other thing that is interesting is, you see, I haven't seen it quite as much here yet, but in the States where Trump has been talking about getting rid of the illegal immigrants and whatnot, people are like, oh, well, won't be able to have anybody to do these jobs, like these, lower. And it strikes me as odd because that's the exact same argument that was used at the end of slavery.
Sure, yeah.
Right? Like, it's like, we can't get rid of these slaves. We're not going to be able to afford
who's going to do all the
clothes.
slave work?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's like,
I don't think that's the argument. Yeah.
well, what immediately happened after slavery fell, like, I don't even know, it wasn't even that long after, like, the cotton gin was invented and, like, reduced the labor requirement for cotton to, like, near zero.
That's right.
Like, it was, so this is what happens. Like, well, we'll find a way.
That's right.
Right? You can't just trade one problem for another and then go, this will be better.
I agree. I agree with you 100%. And I agree. And along those lines, I've said this before, and I will continue to say it. Regardless of what issue we're talking about, I don't think there is any issue anywhere in the world on this planet that we as human beings cannot solve.
And that is such a difference in mentality between what we're told to believe and what you and I believe.
Yes.
Because, like, for example, when I hear someone's getting married and having kids, I'm like stoked for them.
Yeah,
right.
Me as well.
Like,
absolutely, man.
Because that person, instead of seeing them as a burden on our environment, I'm like, that could be another genius.
That's right.
That solves the problems.
That's right.
Right. And so this idea like that, too many people and like, oh, we're ruining it. It's like, so it's Luddite, and it's, I don't know if you know where the history of that word comes from, but it's very Luddite in its conception, because it's like the idea that, like, nothing else is going to change.
Right.
Well, of course, other things are going to change. This is humanity's always found a way to go past where it's been. And that's just an optimist view of the future rather than a pessimist view.
That's right. And that would be an example that would tie back to, in a roundabout way, that ties back to what I was saying, there's the fact that we're in this culture war in the Western world. I would be, I guess, culturally, I would be a traditional conservative person, right? I'm all for the nuclear family and 2-parent households, and raise your kids and raise them right and teach them what they need to learn and send them off to the world to be good
Everybody
citizens.
believed that until 5 minutes ago.
Yeah, but and to me, it's like, what? I don't even want to hear this other argument. This other argument is nonsense, right? But it's really happening, and it's not only that there are a handful of people arguing against that, and their voices are magnified, and for some reason we pay attention to them. We should just ignore them. But we also, our governments don't do anything to incentivize or promote that. So if I come back to, man, look, I was a 80s, 90s kid like yourself. I'm 10 years older than you, but that's just how it worked, man. You when you grew up, when you got to be a teenager, you got a job and you started working. And then by the time you became an adult, you already had 5 years of experience because you've been working since you were 12 or 13 years old. That was just very common, right?
Yeah.
I knew very few people growing up in high school who didn't have jobs.
I always worked, yeah.
Right? I mean, I grew up in the country, and in fairness, you had to own a vehicle to get anywhere. There's no buses going to Jador.
Yeah.
But when you turned 16, you went and got your license that day. And you already had saved up your money to buy your car. You just needed to get your license. And then once, because you had already been, whatever, God, man, I did everything. Mowing grass, baiting lobster traps, raking blueberries, working at the gas station, working as a lifeguard. I did everything. So by the time I turned 16, I had saved my $3,000 or whatever it cost to buy my first car. And I bought my car, and then that was it, man. I was gone.
Yeah.
Right? I was like an adult.
Yeah.
And man, like
how old were you when you got married?
24.
Okay, I was 21 or 22.
Or 20,
Yeah,
2001.
Also young.
24, 25. Yeah.
That was very young.
I was young. My wife and I started early.
Yeah.
We got married young. We had children young. So, I'm still a pretty young guy, and I have my youngest son is in 11th grade. So like one more year, man, we're empty nesters.
Yeah, you had him younger than me. Our youngest just turned 1.
Is that right? Yeah.
Yeah.
But I have buddies of mine that have, are 56, 57 years old and have 2 or 3 year olds at home.
I mean,
But
just about
power to
like,
the man. It's
yeah, great.
like my wife and I just, it's not like we actively set out to, oh, let's hurry up and have our kids early and do, it just worked out that way. I was a workaholic type personality, and my wife is an amazing wife and mother. And so because of that, I was able to be a workaholic, and I didn't have to miss birthday parties, or I still was coaching little league baseball teams and going to every hockey game and every birthday party. I didn't miss any of that. But I may have had to, there were times where I may have had to just be at the birthday and then eat the cake and
run out the door,
give the kids a kiss and bolt out the door. But I didn't miss any of those moments. But
was your wife stay at home?
yes.
Yeah, so was mine.
Yeah, she was, my wife was in the business as well. She was a kitchen designer before my son was born. And then when she went on maternity leave, she just didn't go back to work after that. But she works, man.
Yeah, of course.
And again, this is again, when you come in and you start having these conversations, there are those that have issue with or find fault with stay at home, the idea of being a stay at home mom, or, not working outside the home kind of thing. And
some people don't have the option to, and I
understand that. And it's one thing, if I say to someone, look, given the opportunity, I would love for everyone to have the opportunity to do that. But I'm not suggesting that every woman should be a stay-at-home mom. I'm not saying that at all. You should do what you want to do, right? But for many women, that's what they want to do, and I think it's a shame. It's a real shame that society would discourage that. If they have the means to do it, if they're fortunate enough to be able to do it, especially in today's, financial climate when it comes to how much things cost. If there's a couple, a husband and wife, or, man and woman, and they are going to have children, and she wants to be a stay-at-home mom and they can afford to do so, then.
But you understand, this is a difference there is a political aspect to this. And you'd say it as culture war. And, the problem with the term culture war is like 10 people say it and mean 10 different things.
Sure.
But in this case, like, I'd put that in that category because, like, you take the impetus of the Harper government was to make it so that you could income split. So, like, you could take some of your income, your wife would declare some of it, and basically your household income was taxed.
Right.
Whereas liberal government's focus is on providing affordable childcare.
Right.
And, like, those are ideologically different driven things.
Yes, totally different.
Because one's saying, like, we want to make it easier for parents to stay at home with their kids. And the other one says, we want to make it easier for them to go to work.
That's right.
And to me, that's a big deal. Like, that to me is a big deal.
That's right.
Like,
it's one thing if they said, it would be one thing if they didn't do away with one to do the other, right? So if they said, hey, listen, we're still keeping the income splitting thing, but we're also going to make childcare more affordable.
The reason liberally minded or Keynesian economic type people won't do that is that they think that by having women at home, you've shrunk your workforce and then you'll hurt your country. I disagree with that stance.
Sure.
Like, that's their logic behind it. I just think that's silly. And I actually had this conversation with a guy, and he was explaining this to me, and I told him, I said, first of all, don't conflate with what's good for your family is what's good for society. Like, in other words, do what's right for your family. That's your responsibility, primarily.
But you and I are on the same page. We're not saying what you should or shouldn't do.
Yeah, but I am making the argument that's optimal, and I don't.
Yeah, but there's I
don't even want that. Really, like,
sure.
You know what I mean? Like, it's
sure. Now, again, if you need to go to work because you can't afford physically to be home and having children, I understand that.
Yeah, and that's actually something to be fixed. Like, that's
I think that should be fixed. I think that's something that a government should be helping young people and young families to overcome. So to make it easier.
So this is good, because it's good. So when you the statement you made is a statement I've made many times about, like, that there's no political party that kind of matches what I think, right? And in that, I mean, in the truest, in the most what would you say, like, literal sense of the term, I think that's true for everybody. Like, at the end of the day, if you have, 100 people in a room, there's 100 different opinions, like, how to handle something, right? And then usually that argument kind of devolves into something like a lesser of two evils type argument, right? Which I don't like that either, right? I'm not a big fan of that either. And then But here's how what changed about my thinking on this. So like because I used to think all these political parties, maybe there shouldn't even be political parties. Like maybe it should all be like the municipal elections where everybody just runs on their own. And I mean, there's a certain logic to that. But what happened to me is I started finding out more about how the system, like how the political parties operate, how they work, what is the system that how do their policies come about, for example. Every riding across Canada has this thing called an EDA. If you heard of Electoral District Association. Within that EDA, there's like an administrative thing, and one of the positions in there is policy. And I could go to my policy chair in Halifax West and say, hey, here's something I'd like to be considered as policy. And enough people, it kind of goes forward, and then it kind of makes its way through the process. And then there's a policy convention every 4 years, and the new policy gets voted on. And then what happens is there's a document, public document, anybody can find right now for any political party, the policy declaration.
Right.
And it just has everything that in their policy. And then if you want to add something or amend it, then if you get the plurality of people to do it, it gets changed. And then the party acts within the bounds of that document. There is leeway, obviously, like you can choose to focus on something and not other things, or you could there's a certain sense in which there's leeway for the leader in particular to kind of not change, but kind of divert a little bit from it if the circumstances require it.
Sure. So
because of policy conventions every 4 years, we need to make a decision right now. So there's but in more and more, it's a very kind of grassroots thing in the sense that you get to kind of have your voice if you can get the right amount of people to do it. And this was one of the things that I realized about the PPC and where I don't think it's going anywhere. Personally, and it's coming from someone that ran for it, and also ran for it. By the way, I had a lot of coverage, a lot of media coverage at the time, because while I was being protested by Antifa at an event, and someone was screaming and whatever, it came out that I had an immigrant wife. My wife's a Polish immigrant.
Okay.
So we met in Norway, and I brought her here under family class sponsorship. I'm very familiar with the system, the immigration system, and how to do it legally.
Right.
And so, and that got me I was on, Bruce Frisco did a story on me, and I was on News 957 a couple times, and just having these conversations. And, but the reason, the thing I have about the PPC is not that necessarily, I'm not attacking anybody in the PPC, but what I will say is when you withdraw yourself from the process, you're going to get the opposite of what you think you're going to get. And what I'm saying they're withdrawing is all those voices in the Conservative Party that were leaning that way are now out of the party, and they're in the PPC. And they're essentially screaming into the void, right? And then you have the Conservatives that are left behind, someone like myself who still is quite right-wing. I'm very, I consider myself very right-wing. I'm okay with it. I understand the limitations of my ideology as well, but that's just where I'm at. But I'm kind of left, not alone, because there are definitely more people in the Conservative Party like me.
Sure.
But I could use the help, right, within the party for getting more of the policies that someone like you and I would like to see in the party, right?
Right, yeah.
And so I think people conflate when they see the parties vote as a block about what's actually going on there. They think it's the vote's been whipped and your personal opinion doesn't matter. And it's yeah, that's actually true. Because when you sign up to be a candidate and an MP for a political party, you actually sign that you're okay with that policy declaration.
Right.
And you're going to follow that policy declaration. And so it's not about, this is what I realized, it's not about, it's really that the opinion of me, my personal opinion, doesn't matter beyond anybody else's ability to get anything added to policy. Now, in caucus, I understand sometimes they can get, caucus meetings are only very select people are there, right? Members of parliament, the leader, and probably national councils, a few things like that. And that's all that's allowed in those meetings. And they can hammer stuff out in there. There's disagreements in that. But when they leave that room, it's agreed that almost, if you can imagine nature documentaries, and the fish are swimming, they all turn this way, and then they all turn this way, and they all turn this way. And that's their security in keeping that motion going the same way. And when I started realizing, it's like, oh, actually, that actually does make sense, because their job is not to represent their own personal interest, but the interest of this bigger picture idea, the policy.
Right.
And then, so that's why I'm encouraging people, is like, and this is what happened to me. Now I'm more involved with the Conservative Party, because I want to see things go in a particular direction.
Everything just has moved so far left that those of us who are not left, who feel like we used to be in the center, now we feel like we're standing on the right, screaming into the void of, well, what happened to, well, hold on a sec, what happened to...
Give me an example, because I mean, like, I would argue that you're correct about the Conservative Party up until Pierre Poilievre, because Pierre Poilievre is like, he's been saying the same stuff for like,
so in fairness, what I will say is, I give Pierre Poilievre the benefit of the doubt. And I say this because I don't want someone coming back to me in 6 months' time if he gets elected and then we turn out, and we find out he was lying all the time.
Yeah, but that's on him, not on you.
That's right. Yeah. But at face value, everything that I've seen him say and the way he delivers it and the way he answers questions, I'm a big Poilievre fan. Yeah, I am. I think he gets asked a question, he answers it. I've seen him ask questions about whether or not he'll have anyone who's associated with the WEF in his cabinet, and he's made a clear answer no. He's been very clear about what he plans to do from a funding perspective with the CBC. He's been very clear recently about what he thinks about our natural resources.
I don't think there's any question. I mean, may not make my Conservative Party friends very happy, but I don't think there's any question that the PPC pushed the Conservatives for the right.
Yeah, probably.
Like they had someone knocking on their door in the back. They had to do something. They had to answer to that. So, but that's like the involvement with the that, like, I like to see. I want to see more people involved in the system. That's ultimately. And let me tell you something. The barrier to entry in this is like much, much lower than you would think. If you want to help, like, it's easy to get. You know what I mean? They're not going to say no.
Sure.
Like, it's you have this podcast, like this, like things like this, conversations, and people seeing, like backing up a little bit, when I was being protested by Antifa in Dartmouth, there's some funny things that happened there, to the point where, like, I was like disturbed, but I was like, I would just eventually start laughing because it was so funny. But actually, a guy that was there showed up the protest. I'm like, oh, that's somebody I went to school with. And I said, hey, what do you do? He's like, well, this is bad. I was like, yeah, but you know me, I'm not racist. He's like, yeah, I know you though. And I'm like, well, do you think that maybe if you knew these other people, you would also not know that they're not racist? Like, maybe like your enemy's not what you think. And another woman that found out I had an immigrant wife, she's like, you have an immigrant wife? Like, she was like, couldn't believe it. This is crazy. And it's like, yeah. She's like, well, where is she from? I said, Poland. She goes, not that type of immigrant. In other words, like, I'm okay with certain immigrants, but not any
not
with
European
a little bit,
not Eastern European.
Yeah, like I'm okay with any, but don't only bring the white ones. Like, it's so like this cartoonish version of my thoughts, right? Like this lunacy really is what it is. We can get at each other's throat. I think by nature I'm a unifier. I think that's one of the things. By nature I'm a unifying person. I like to unify people, and so it's like take climate, for example. This is one, I've been saying this since I was like 20 years old. It never made sense, the argument to me about this, the climate change. And it's like, oh, here you go, it's gonna be climate change. It's like, no. What I don't understand is that we all agree on it.
Right.
Like, I don't want pollution. You don't want pollution. But if I don't subscribe to a very specific idea of what you think pollution does, now I'm you, but it's like we're at each other's throat over nothing. Like, we all agree that we want clean water, air, soil, etc.
Right.
Like, what are we doing? Why are we fighting?
Right.
And this is what I'm wondering. I'm always careful because it's like I don't want to be going led down a garden path over something that we all agree on anyway, right? And part of this is some of the topics now that are like, the populist beliefs of. I'm not going to let you shame me for something that is a perfectly legitimate belief. It's a majority held position, and you just don't want to accept it. I mean, look at Like democracy, I don't even know what that even means anymore. I'm confused, like about what it even means.
Sure.
I don't know if you've been following what's happening in Romania, like where they elected a president. They're like, no, disallow that. Then just today, I think it was today or yesterday, the guy that was okay, well, he can't run, I'll run. The other right wing guy, they're like, no, you're not allowed to run either.
Right.
And it's like, so democracy is when we get the result that we want.
Right.
Right. And this is anti-populist, right?
That's right.
So I don't even know, like I'm really, it concerns me. It concerns me. And it's, I'm, like I said, I'm just completely baffled about what's going on in Canadian politics right now. The math is not a liberal strong point.
Right.
That's always been an issue. It's, I mean, like famously budgets will balance themselves.
Right.
You know, Carney's now taken credit for Jim Flaherty's work, from back in the Harper days. Mm-hmm. I mean, like I said, Keynesian economics. I'd ask anybody. It's spelled Keynesian, but if you look it up and like the aspects of it, and this is not like a conspiracy. This is literally like the schools of thought in economics, and Austrians very like supply and like all the stuff that we kind of like know to be like at least I think obviously true, supply and demand. Like these are all like Austrian things. Right. Keynesian is like use of the government to like manipulate things in the direction you want to go.
Right.
Just not for it. And I suggest anybody look that up. That's and literally for me, that's enough. Like I just need, are you Keynesian? Yeah, I'm not voting for you. It's like, it's that simple for me. Sure. Like it's, and so Carney has a long history of like Keynesian style manipulations through in his career. But again, this is the problem though, is like no one's going to know that. Because what's going to happen is there's going to be an election called likely in the next few days. Especially, I mean, Carney, like the group around them, they're not dumb. I just don't agree with them. Mm-hmm. But they're smart enough to know that he's peaked. Like it's downhill from here. They got to act quickly. Mm-hmm. So there's going to be an election, and then during that time, likely it won't be tremendously favorable to the conservative coverage from the mainstream media. And then the average person, like they're busy working and stuff. They don't need, like, they're not going to like sit down and like studying Keynesian economics. And
no, of course not.
They're not going to look at like, what is the conservative policy on this? And does it, it's going to be messaging, and it will be, and so like all this stuff, it's just not going to get to see the light of day. It's an unfortunate thing. But it's hard to get people like SDTC. So I was in Ottawa when the SDTC scandal broke, which is the green slush fund. I don't know if you remember that one. Yep. It was, I can't remember. I don't even know how many millions is up to now. It's like hundreds of millions of dollars. Yep. It shows you how little it matters because I don't even know the total. Right. Right. And I'm being, Rick Perkins, if you hear this, don't get mad at me because he's the one that was like heading this out. But I remember even saying that. It's like, you're going to have a hard time getting people to care about this. And they're like, what are you talking about? It's millions of dollars. And it's like, yeah, I agree with all of that. And everybody should care. But we was almost $1 billion. The SNC Lavalin was like actually criminal. Like there's like, and I mean, like there's almost like another day, another scandal from this government, and just nobody cares. I don't know why.
Would you say in the last 10 years, the Liberals have followed the policies that they promised?
I think so. And that's actually what I'm worried about. Like when people are like, oh, I hope he does, politicians don't do what they say they're going to do. With Trudeau, I was like, I hope he doesn't do what he says he's going to do. I hope he stays far away from, because he made it very clear what his plans were. Sure. And for some reason, people liked it for some, I don't think they liked it. I just don't think they knew. He didn't fool me for a minute. Sure. Like it did. Like it was. So, Poilievre, I had a friend come to me, and it was so cool what he said. He said, this next election will be the first time I'm voting for somebody instead of against somebody.
Oh, is that right? Yeah.
Yeah. So he said, I'm not voting. He hated Trudeau, but
sure.
He said, the first time I'm actually excited to actually go vote because I hope he does what he says he's going to do. This is a big issue in politics that, as far as I can tell, is that like you and I are conservative. We're both successful business people. Like, we're not, like, our highest and best use isn't politician.
No,
right?
Absolutely not.
So but for a lot of liberals with their, underwater basket weaving degree,
Sure.
Like politics is their highest and best.
Sure. It might have been what they could have been aiming at that from the time they were teenagers.
There's nothing higher than that
Right.
for what they're at.
Sure.
So and this is the thing is like a lot of us, especially all the more conservative, also we just want to be left alone. So
Sure.
being left alone is not getting involved; it's staying away from being involved.
That's right.
But unfortunately, I think that I wish, and this is I tell it all the time. I wish we lived in a world where I didn't have to care about politics.
I agree 100%.
I wish that they just like
I didn't used to. I didn't care about politics 10 years ago.
back in the Chrétien era. Like I mean, I was there's nothing similar between a Trudeau or a Carney liberal and a Jean Chrétien liberal.
Right.
Like no similarity whatsoever.
No.
We used to argue about like helicopter procurement.
Right.
Like that was the big argument of the day. And like the sponsorship scandal that was like $20 million or something like that. Like those were like the big things, right? And now it's like the nature of reality
Yes.
is up for argument.
Right.
And like billions of dollars of scandals.
Right.
Like it's so crazy.
Yeah.
And I just wish, I don't know. I'm worried. I'm not going to lie. I'm worried.
Well, I'm with you. I would prefer to not care about politics because I would prefer to just leave it to the powers that be. Just, okay, I hope good people step forward and good, competent, qualified people step forward and they represent the constituents and
Argue about the best way to fix the roads, not like, again,
That's
the
right.
nature of reality.
Exactly.
I think the Conservatives are at their best, Poilievre in particular, at his best when he's laying out a vision.
Sure.
Like, and this is what I really liked. I said, oh man, this guy's on fire. Really early on when I saw it, because he was able to lay out a vision. It wasn't just the spreadsheet. It was the ability to say, here's what your life is going to look like if I get in a position of leadership.
Right.
And I think that's when they're at their best. And I'm praying that they go back to that, because it was resonating with Canadians. And that's what Canadians need to see. It's like, here's how your life is going to improve with us, not how bad your life was with them. And because that's all true.
Of course.
Like, it's all true. But I like Poilievre's at his best when he's up. Usually near the end of his speeches, where he's like, you're going to go to your family is going to come home. They're going to call you home for supper, and you're going to be not worried about it. You're going to be, the streets are going to be safe. This is when I think the messaging is at its best. Because unfortunately, not everybody's like me or you, where it's like, yeah, that's obviously silly. I'm not going down that road. They're just like, well, Jack Layton's a perfect example. I mean, I can't even imagine voting for an NDPer. And how many people were like, oh, I like Jack Layton's a nice guy. I don't care if you're a nice guy.
No, that's right.
That's like not even the top 10 of requirements for me to pick a leader. That
has nothing to do with it. Yeah, it has nothing to do with it.
It's all
aside, whether or not you're a nice guy doesn't have anything to do with it. But I do need to know that you're somebody who other people are going to be able to deal with. Like, you can go in and have a conversation. You can work things out. You can be reciprocal. You know how to manage people. You know how to sit in a room and negotiate something with other people and leave the table and everybody's happy and do a deal.
Well,
like, you have to know that.
Here's the argument I'll make for Pierre. I'm trying to think how I could tell you this without like kind of giving away other people's stories, but it's it's very easy. So if you look at Pierre Poilievre in House of Commons, which isn't sitting right now in our nice democracy, the people flanking him, some of them ran against him.
Right.
Like, he's not like he was very all the people, even people that were like MPs who didn't support him, they supported one of his opponents in the leadership. Even they were brought into the fold. Right. Like, he didn't reject. And so that's a very good sign. Yeah. That's a very good sign to me.
Yeah, that's good.
I've said it many times, Pierre Poilievre does half of what he said he did. We got to do. He'll be the best prime minister we've ever had. Yeah,
he has a huge... There's huge potential for him to make huge change and make a huge difference in the lives of everybody in the country. And I mean, he could be a hero if he does it, if he gets a chance to do it, and if he does what he said he's going to do, and if he's able to do it, because he's not railroaded by those that don't want to see him succeed. But hopefully, it's going to be an interesting couple of months here, I guess.
Because I deal a lot with politicians and politics and whatever, I know what political answers look like. We all do. But I'm like hypersensitive to it. And when I met Poilievre in Ottawa, when I was there, I met him in the lobby, and I shook his hand, and I said to him, "Look, there's 100 things I could say to you. I could talk to you all day. I'm just going to say one thing." I said, "I have a lot of friends who don't think who you vote for makes a difference, and we don't need any more cynicism in Canada. Please just do what you said you're going to do." Mm-hmm. And then I started listening, and that's when I started listening, because I'm listening because there's a lot of political answers you could give me in that moment. There's, we'll do our best. We'll see what we can do. Something like kind of.
Sure, yep.
He shook my hand, looked me square in the eye, and said, "We will do what we said we're going to do." That's not an evasive move. He looked me in the eye and said that. And so at this point, all I can say is if he doesn't, that's on him. I've done my due diligence. I've done my homework. That's my man. Sure. That's the guy I'm voting for.
Sure.
And the local candidates in the air are great. I'm hoping. I really do. I'm maybe it's just like hopeless optimism. I'm hoping that it gets back to where it was, turns around, and we get anything short of a conservative majority is not a conservative government.
Right.
People need to understand that.
That's right.
If it's a conservative minority, that's just a liberal majority.
That's right.
Right? Like it's because the NDP and the Liberals and the Bloc will all vote together.
That's right.
And it will be back in an election in 6 months. Yep. So let's just get a conservative government.
Hopefully.
Yeah.
Hopefully. Well, listen, man, I appreciate you coming in. This was a good conversation.
Yeah, thanks.
Anything else you want to add before we wrap up?
I don't know how long we were talking, but
long but
time.
It's good, man. It's good. It doesn't take long, man. It doesn't take long to fill it up. But we cover a lot of ground here. It was good.
I'm sure we'll be talking more.
Absolutely. Yeah. Appreciate that. Thanks, Rob.